I'm Ava, 32 years old, and 2 nights ago my phone lit up with a group message that cracked something open in me. My parents wrote, "We think it's best you step away for now." No explanation, no call, just a cold little bubble on my screen. Seconds later, my Aunt Sofía reacted with a thumbs up, like my exile was nothing more than a cute cat meme. I stared at it, thumb hovering, my pulse so loud it drowned out the kitchen clock. That tiny emoji felt louder than any slap. I typed back a single line. "Understood. I'll respect that and step away too." I didn't add a smiley. I didn't ask why. I just hit send, laid the phone face down on the counter, and reached for the jar sitting beside my stove. Sol Madre. My sourdough starter. 8 years of quiet tending, bubbling under a towel. The air smelled faintly of apples and yeast, alive and stubborn, the way I wished my voice had been at that moment. Outside my window, Austin traffic hummed, but inside my apartment everything felt frozen. I thought of the nights I'd stayed in the bakery past midnight, running test batches until my hands were cracked with flour. I thought of the vendor contracts I'd fought to secure when no one else wanted the stress. And now, just like that, I was told to step away. A group text had erased me. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just closed my laptop, logged into the supply portal, and clicked a little button I knew would speak louder than any reply. Suspend access. The screen flickered confirmation. My breath steadied. At 2:15 a.m., the buzzing started. First one call, then another, then a flood. By sunrise, 87 missed calls glowed across the glass. I let them pile up, my jar of Sol Madre still breathing steadily on the counter beside me, the only thing in that room that felt alive. When I tell you that Calder Hearth should have folded 3 years ago, I'm not exaggerating. We were one bad inspection away from shutting our doors. The ovens were failing, the books were bleeding red, and the family was pretending everything was fine, smiling at church on Sundays while the walls of the bakery reeked of sour grease and mildew. I was the one who stayed late to scrub the drains, to document every temperature log, to fight through pages of food safety code no one else had patience for. My father called me dramatic. My Aunt Sofía called it busy work. But when the state inspector showed up unannounced and passed us with a clean report, they threw a party in her honor. My name wasn't even mentioned. Numbers don't lie, though. I remember standing in that fluorescent-lit office, pointing at the spreadsheet. Food waste had dropped 18% in 6 months. Vendor credit lines secured at $280,000, interest-free, because I negotiated terms no one else even understood. That lifeline saved payroll one brutal August when sales dipped and half the staff was ready to walk. My cousin Marco bragged at the next family dinner that he'd found a way to keep the lights on. Everyone clapped. I sat there chewing dry brisket, wondering how a man who can't even balance a till could claim my work as his. And then came Sol Madre, my starter, my obsession. Every morning before dawn, I'd feed it in silence, listening to the faint hiss and pop like a secret conversation only I was invited to. That culture carried a signature flavor, the tang, the caramel notes that pulled customers back in. I filed the recipe and process under a trade secret, marked every jar with a coded tag, even registered the documentation with an attorney. But in the shop window, Sofía would beam at customers and call it her family tradition. She hadn't touched a scale in her life. My chest burned every time I heard her say it. I think the cruelest part wasn't the lies. It was the gaslighting. "Ava, you care too much about credit," my mother whispered one night as she wiped lipstick from a glass, or Marco's smirk when he said, "We're all one family. Does it matter who signs the papers?" It mattered to me. Every late-night batch, every blister on my palms, every clause I combed through so we wouldn't get buried in debt, it all mattered. And yet, year after year, I was the shadow behind their spotlight. So when that group text came, telling me to step away, it wasn't just sudden. It was the last nail hammered into a box they'd been building around me for years. I should have seen it coming. Maybe I did. But here's the thing. They still don't realize what I've been building in the dark just for myself. Sunday dinners in my family aren't really about food. They're theater. The Calder table is long, polished oak, set with candles no one lights, and china that only leaves the cabinet once a week. Sofía always claims the seat to my father's right, smiling for invisible cameras, as if a reporter might jump out from behind the curtains. My cousin Marco scrolls his phone under the table, chiming in only when there's praise to be stolen. And me? I'm parked 3 seats down, close enough to hear every word, far enough to feel like a guest at my own Bloodlines show. That night, the smell of roasted chicken drifted through the house, but I barely tasted it. My father was bragging about how tradition keeps customers loyal, his fork tapping rhythmically against the plate. Sofía leaned in, her bracelets clinking as she cut him off with one of her polished anecdotes. How a senator's wife just adored our bread. How the bakery felt like heritage itself. I wanted to laugh. Heritage doesn't negotiate supplier contracts. Heritage doesn't disinfect drains at 2 a.m. But I stayed quiet, chewing, swallowing the lump of truth with mashed potatoes. Marco piped up next. "We should expand into San Antonio, Uncle. People already know our brand." He said it like he'd just invented oxygen. My father nodded thoughtfully. "Now that's thinking ahead." I gripped my water glass so tight my knuckles ached. 6 months earlier, I had written a 40-page expansion plan, cost analysis, vendor mapping, labor projections, and they had called it overcomplicating things. Now Marco's throwaway line got applause. My mother, always the mediator, touched my arm softly. "Mija, you push too hard. Men don't like when you sound so serious. Let your father speak." Her words were sugar, but they stung all the same. Sofía caught the exchange and smiled faintly, a victory smirk hidden behind her napkin. The clink of cutlery, the hum of polite conversation, it all blurred until it felt like a wall of noise pressing me down, telling me my place. I sipped my wine, eyes tracing the rim of my plate, rehearsing silence like it was a survival skill. But inside, every nerve burned with the truth they refused to see. The company stood on numbers only I knew how to keep steady. They could ignore me at this table. They could sideline me in the spotlight. But what they didn't realize, what none of them wanted to admit, was that I had built levers they couldn't control forever. 2 days later, I walked into the bakery's back office with my laptop balanced on one arm, ready for the vendor call I'd scheduled weeks in advance. I had color-coded charts, purchase histories, freight estimates, all lined up like soldiers. But when I pulled open the door, the room was already full. Marco sat at the head of the table, sleeves rolled, leaning back like he belonged there. On the speakerphone, I heard Nadia from our flour supplier. My stomach tightened. "Ava's protocols have made things smoother," Nadia was saying. "We've cut delivery delays by—" "Right," Marco cut in smoothly, flashing a grin. "That's what I wanted to talk about. My system's really helping us cut waste. You'll see even better numbers next quarter." My system. My notes, my spreadsheets, my weekends. Heat shot up the back of my neck. I slipped into a chair at the corner, biting the inside of my cheek until I tasted iron. No one looked at me. Not my father, standing by the whiteboard with arms crossed. Not Sofía, scribbling something in her glossy planner. They let Marco spin my work into his glory, word by word. When the call ended, my father clapped him on the shoulder. "That's initiative, son." Son. Marco wasn't even his child. I pressed my hands against my knees, nails digging into denim, forcing myself not to explode. Later that afternoon, I checked my email and saw another sting. The weekly operations update had gone out without my name on the CC. The subject line read, "Transitioning responsibilities." Transitioning to who? I scrolled down, pulse racing. My duties were listed under interim coverage. Marco. I stared at the glow of the screen, the cursor blinking like a silent dare. Every click of the mouse echoed in my chest. It wasn't an accident. It was a message, a slow erasure. And just when I thought it couldn't get clearer, a new ping hit my phone. A group invite to a tasting event for a 300-guest catering contract. The caption read, "Handled by Marco." No mention of the starter formula. No mention of the QA process that made such a deal possible. Just Marco holding the credit. I closed my eyes and let the buzz of the fluorescent lights wash over me. They thought this was a small cut, a quiet transfer of credit, something I'd swallow like all the others, but they didn't know the wound was already infected. The message came on a Tuesday afternoon, just as I was measuring pH levels in a test batch of dough. My phone buzzed once, then twice. Then the group thread lit up across the screen. "After much discussion, we think it's best you step away from operations for now." Signed by my father, but I knew whose voice shaped the words. For a moment, the bakery air felt heavier, like the yeast itself had stopped breathing. My gloves smelled of vinegar and flour, sharp and earthy, grounding me while my chest hollowed out. Before I could even process, a new bubble popped up. Sofia's reaction. Just a thumb. Cold, tiny, final. It landed harder than any sentence. Then Marco chimed in. "Don't worry, I'll handle things during the transition." Transition. Like I was luggage being wheeled out of an airport. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from clarity. This wasn't a mistake or a slip. It was a verdict they'd been rehearsing for months. I could have defended myself right there. I could have sent screenshots of vendor reports, contracts signed with my initials, production logs in my handwriting. But why? Evidence only matters when someone is willing to see it, and they never were. So I typed back one line. Understood. I'll respect that decision and step away too. My thumb hovered over send for half a second. Then I pressed it, watching the message slip into the thread like a stone sinking into water. No splash, no echo, just gone. I peeled off my gloves, placed them neatly beside the jar of Sol Madre, and stared at the bubbles rising slow and steady under the cloth cover. Alive, patient, relentless. A part of me cracked open with the same quiet force. They thought they had closed the book on me with a single group text, but what they didn't realize is that I had been writing chapters they'd never read, pages full of leverage they couldn't touch. That same night, I didn't pour a glass of wine or call a friend to vent. I opened my laptop, the blue glow washing across my kitchen like a stage light, and signed into the secure folder I'd built years ago. Contracts, filings, inspection reports, every document labeled, dated, cross-referenced. People called me obsessive. I called it insurance. The first email went to Jonathan, my attorney. Subject line, Notice of Withdrawal of Operational License. The wording was polite, almost bland, but every clause was a blade. I cited the trade secret filing on Sol Madre, attached the QA compliance agreement each vendor had signed, highlighted Section 4.2. Any suspension of the authorized operator automatically triggers a hold on supply until reauthorization. I blind copied myself to a separate account, sliding the evidence into a safe I knew they couldn't touch. Click. Sent. Next came Nadia, our flour supplier. I typed slowly, fingers steady, despite the adrenaline humming in my ears. Per compliance protocol, please suspend ingredient shipments until QA revalidation under my signature. This is standard procedure, no exception. I read it twice. No anger, no sarcasm. Just the kind of corporate language that makes people panic more than shouting ever could. Click. Sent. The final step was in the supply portal. I logged in, scrolled past the cheerful dashboard, and toggled one quiet switch. Access suspended. The sound was nothing, just a soft tap of a key. But in that moment, it was louder than any argument I'd ever had across that dinner table. I leaned back, the chair creaking under me, and listened to the silence. Outside, a delivery truck groaned down the street, brakes squealing. Inside, the only sound was the faint hiss of Sol Madre on the counter, alive and indifferent. My chest loosened. For the first time all day, I felt air expand fully in my lungs. I wasn't sabotaging them. I wasn't burning the bakery down. I was following the rules they'd signed, the clauses they'd skimmed past, the safeguards they thought would never matter. They wanted me gone from operations? Fine. But without my authorization, without my signature, nothing moved. Not flour, not yeast, not dough. I shut the laptop, slid the folder of hard copies from the safe, and placed it beside me on the couch. Each page smelled faintly of ink and dust, the scent of years I'd been dismissed as too meticulous. Let them laugh at my binders, my spreadsheets, my checklists. Tomorrow, those same papers would choke their supply lines. And as I sat there, sipping lukewarm tea, my phone buzzed once more with another group thread update. Memes, golf scores, vacation photos, like nothing had shifted. They had no idea, not yet, but by dawn, the ovens would run cold. At 2:15 a.m., the first call buzzed through the dark. I rolled over, the phone face down on the nightstand, and let it hum against the wood until it stopped. Then another, and another. By 3, the screen glowed like a lighthouse in my bedroom. Missed calls stacking, banner after banner. By sunrise, the count sat at 89 calls, 51 messages, and a dozen frantic voicemails. I padded into the kitchen barefoot, the tile cold under my feet, and brewed coffee while the phone kept buzzing. The hiss of the kettle mixed with the vibration on the counter, a strange duet of panic and calm. I didn't answer, not one. The previews told me enough. Ava, call me now. This is insane. Clients are asking questions. You can't do this to family. Sofia's name flashed with a string of exclamation points. Marco tried a voice memo, his words cutting off halfway through. We have a catering contract tomorrow. You're ruining... Delete. Gone. But then came the ones from clients, and those I opened. A bride-to-be, worried about her reception order. A local hotel manager, asking if the breakfast buffet was still safe. My replies were calm, careful. Your individual contracts are unaffected. All QA compliance remains intact. Deliveries proceed as scheduled. I wrote it the way I'd learned to breathe during panic attacks. Slow, measured, steady. By contrast, my family's threads spun into chaos. We'll fix this in the morning. Just tell them it's a misunderstanding. Please, Ava, don't let the ovens go cold. They still thought this was a bluff. They didn't understand the system was already locked. I sipped my coffee, steam curling against my cheek, and scrolled through the unread messages. My thumb hovered, not to reply, but to mute the thread. Silence fell in one tap, and as the sun slid up over Austin, painting my kitchen in pale orange, I realized something. The longer I stayed quiet, the louder their panic became. By 8:30 the next morning, my security camera pinged. A line of familiar faces filled the frame. My father at the front, jaw set tight. Sofía in oversized sunglasses, though the sky was cloudy. Marco trailing behind with a clipboard he didn't know how to use. Even my mother, lips pressed thin, clutching her purse like a shield. They looked less like family and more like a delegation, storming the embassy of someone they thought still belonged to them. I had been ready for hours. My dining table was stripped of flowers and books, reset into a conference spread. Stacks of neatly clipped documents sat at each place setting, pens aligned, coffee already brewed. The smell drifted through the room, dark roast, sharp, deliberate. I didn't want comfort. I wanted procedure. At precisely 8:59, I opened the door. Come in, I said, stepping aside. No hugs, no kisses on the cheek, just 2 clipped words, professional and flat. Their eyes flicked around as they entered, surprise flickering when they saw the table laid out like a boardroom. Marco muttered something under his breath. Sofía forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Please, have a seat," I said, gesturing toward the chairs. I remained standing at the head of the table, the seat my father always took at the bakery office. His gaze lingered on me, sharp but unsure, before he sat to my right. The others followed, shuffling papers, murmuring. I poured coffee one by one, the ceramic clink loud in the silence. It wasn't hospitality, it was ceremony. Each cup said, "I control the flow here." I took my own last, then finally sat, folding my hands over the documents. My father cleared his throat. "Ava, this situation has gone far enough. We need to resolve it quickly. The ovens are idle. The Henderson catering—" I raised my hand, palm outward, a gesture I'd watched him use my entire life. This time it was mine. The room fell silent. Sofía's bracelets tinkled as she shifted uncomfortably. "Before we discuss any client contracts," I said evenly, "we need to address the larger issue. You removed me from operations. As of last night, all QA authority under my signature is suspended. That means supply lines are frozen. Nothing moves without revalidation." Marco leaned forward, feigning casual. "So what? You're holding us hostage with paperwork." I looked at him, calm as stone. "Not hostage. Compliance. The rules we all signed. I'm just following them." My mother shifted, whispering, "Mia, don't do this. We're family." I met her eyes, gentle but steady. "Then family should understand better than anyone. When you strip someone of their role, you also strip their authority. And mine is what keeps those ovens running." For the first time, no one spoke over me. The clatter of the city outside, car horns, a barking dog, bled faintly through the windows. Inside, silence sat heavy. I let it stretch, let them feel it. Power isn't in shouting. It's in who can stay quiet the longest. And in that pause, with their coffee steaming untouched in front of them, I realized something. They hadn't come here to negotiate. They'd come here to beg, even if they didn't know it yet. I reached for the small black remote on the table, the kind my father used during shareholder meetings. One click, and the screen on my dining room wall came to life. The sudden glow startled Marco. He nearly dropped his pen. Sofía's sunglasses slipped down her nose as she blinked at the logo filling the screen. Sol Madre, proprietary culture. "This," I said evenly, "is not folklore. It's not Grandma's recipe scribbled on an index card. It's a registered trade secret." I tapped the folder in front of me, sliding copies down the table. The papers whispered against the wood as each set landed in front of them. Filed under state and federal protection. Documented, time-stamped. Witnessed by counsel. My father's brows knit together. "You went behind—" "I went through the law," I cut in. My tone stayed calm, but the pause was sharp enough to draw blood. Every vendor contract tied to Calder Hearth includes compliance clauses linked to my authorization. Specifically, Section 4.2, suspension of the authorized operator triggers immediate QA hold. Sofía rifled through the packet, nails clicking against the stapled pages. "This is ridiculous. Nobody reads those clauses." "That's the problem," I replied, clicking to the next slide. Bar charts bloomed across the screen, food waste percentages, delivery delays, profit margins. I did read them. I negotiated them. That's why waste dropped 18% and why payroll stayed alive last August. Not luck, not magic, paperwork. The numbers were undeniable, bold against the white wall. Marco leaned back, scoffing. "So what? You're just flexing spreadsheets now." I flipped to another slide. The screen filled with a scanned image, UCC1 financing statement. Marco's smirk faltered. My father leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. "I filed this lien 2 years ago," I explained, "to secure vendor credit lines under my name. $280,000 renewed annually. Without my authorization, those lines freeze, which, as of last night, they have. The silence that followed was thick enough to chew. My mother's lips parted, but no words came out. My father's pen tapped once, twice, before stilling entirely. Sophia's face flushed a blotchy red, bracelets rattling as she shifted in her chair. "This is sabotage," she snapped. "You're holding your own family hostage." "No," I said, voice low but steady. "I'm holding you accountable. For years you paraded tradition while ignoring the systems that kept you afloat. I built those systems. I own them, and now I've enforced them." I let the words settle, then advanced to one final slide. A single sentence filled the wall. "No authorization, no ovens." Marco slammed his palm on the table, making the cups rattle. "You can't do this." I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms, letting the silence draw tight again. "Marco," I said softly. I already did. The coffee steam curled between us like smoke after a shot fired. They stared at me, stunned, angry, scrambling for a counterstrike. But none of them could unclick what I'd just set in motion. And what they still didn't know? This was only the beginning. Sophia's bracelets clinked as she shoved the packet away, but her eyes didn't leave the glowing words on the wall. For a moment, her jaw tightened, not in anger. Something older, more brittle. She remembered the smell before she remembered the sight. Warm yeast flour dust clinging to her arms, the kitchen of Calder Hearth when she was 20. Back then, she was the one everyone assumed would inherit. She worked the ovens, charmed the customers, laughed too loudly with the vendors. Her father would pat her shoulder, saying, "Our firebrand, our future." But then Ava was born. At first, Sofía tried to ignore the shift. "A baby is no threat," she told herself, bouncing her niece on her hip while wiping counters. Yet slowly the center of gravity moved. Their father stopped calling Sofía the future and started saving that word for someone still in diapers. She replayed one memory more than any other, the night she pitched an expansion idea. Packaged mixes, branded mugs, Calder coffee for every home. Her father listened, nodding, then said he'd think on it. Weeks later, Ava, just 16, presented a school project eerily similar. He had praised Ava's brilliance, kissed her forehead, told her, "You see the future, mija." Sofía had stood there in the back of the room, clapping with everyone else, nails digging into her palms. No one noticed the blood beating at her cuticles. She learned then that in this family, work didn't matter. Applause did. And somehow, Ava drew applause even when she hadn't earned it. So Sofía reinvented herself. Less flour, more boardrooms. She joined committees, schmoozed bankers, learned to speak in contracts instead of recipes. She told herself it wasn't bitterness, it was strategy. Yet each time Ava's name appeared in a client's mouth, each time a vendor credited her efficiency, Sofía felt the same small cut reopen. "Family comes first," she would say at dinners, raising her glass. But under the toast, the word family meant something sharper: order, loyalty, hierarchy. Now, facing Ava across the table, the old wound throbbed. Seeing her niece sit where Sofía once believed she belonged was unbearable. The paperwork in front of her wasn't just contracts, it was proof Ava had outplayed her at her own game. Her bracelets jingled again as she crossed her arms. "You think this makes you untouchable," she said, her tone cool but threaded with a tremor. "But family doesn't forgive betrayal." Ava didn't flinch. She only looked at Sofía with that infuriating calm. The same calm Sofía remembered from every school recital, every holiday dinner, every board meeting where Ava's presence tilted the spotlight. And in that silence, Sofía realized the truth she'd never admit aloud. It wasn't the contracts, or the liens, or the trade secrets that stung. It was the fact that Ava had become everything Sofía once swore she would be. The coffee on the table had gone cold, but the bitterness in Sofia's chest burned hotter than any oven. And as her eyes narrowed on Ava, one thought crystallized sharp and dangerous. If I can't reclaim the future, I'll make sure she never enjoys it either. The silence cracked with a bang as my father slammed his palm flat on the table. The coffee rippled, papers jumped. His voice was gravel, louder than I had heard in years. "You've crossed a line, Ava. This isn't about compliance anymore. This is about sabotage. We can take you to court for this. Tortious interference, breach of fiduciary duty." The words weren't his, too sharp, too rehearsed. I saw Sofia's hand slide a folded document across the table toward him. She had been waiting for this. Marco pounced, eager. "Exactly. You think you're clever with your clauses and filings, but the bakery is family property. You're just an employee. Any judge will see you as insubordinate." I let their voices crash over me. Sofia's rings clicked against the glass, punctuating her attack. "We raised you. We gave you everything. And this is how you repay us? By strangling our business to feed your ego?" There it was, the classic reversal. Paint me as the villain, them as the victims. Darvo. Textbook. I inhaled slowly, the bitter scent of cold coffee anchoring me. My pulse steadied. "Court," I repeated, my voice calm, almost curious. "You'd like to drag this family into litigation?" My father leaned forward, veins at his temple visible. "If that's what it takes." I clicked my remote. The wall shifted to another slide, a tidy list of vendor names with signatures at the bottom. Then you should be aware that our suppliers, from grain mills to dairy farms, are under contracts that reference me, not Calder and Hearth as a vague entity. Me, personally. If you sue me, you trigger force majeure clauses. Deliveries halt. Permanently. Marco scoffed, but his eyes darted to the signatures. He knew the names. So did my father. I continued, my tone even but razor sharp. "You want to argue fiduciary duty? Let's talk numbers. Payroll survived last summer because of a line of credit I secured. Not a penny from the family accounts. My lien is public record. Any judge will see that while you toasted tradition, I kept the ovens burning." Sofia's lips curled, but there was a tremor there now. She tried to strike back, voice dripping with accusation. "So you want credit for everything? You think you're bigger than the family name?" I leaned forward, letting the light of the projector wash across my face. "No, I think I'm the only one who respected what the family name was worth. While you treated it like a crown, I treated it like collateral." The room bristled, tension crackling like static before a storm. My father opened his mouth, closed it. Even he knew the law was not on his side. I stacked my papers slowly, deliberately. The scrape of paper on wood was louder than their breathing. "If you want to continue down this path, then by all means, file your suit. But remember, every word, every filing becomes public record. Clients will read it. Vendors will read it. The city we've served for 3 generations will read it." I stood, finally, forcing them to look up at me. And when they do, they won't see a victimized family. They'll see a company too blind to recognize the woman who carried it. Sofia's face had gone pale beneath her powder. Marco shifted in his chair, finally quiet. My father stared down at his untouched coffee, jaw tight. I clicked the remote once more. The final slide was stark. A single folder icon with the label, Next Steps. I didn't open it. I let the image hang there, a loaded chamber. "Because what you don't understand," I said softly, "is that everything you've seen so far was only the surface." No one spoke. The glow of the projector painted their faces pale, every wrinkle sharpened, every doubt exposed. I closed the folder on my laptop with a single click. The wall went dark. leaving only the morning sun filtering through the blinds, striping the table with harsh light. "This is how we move forward," I said, sliding a new packet of papers across the polished wood. The sound of stapled corners scratching the table was deliberate, final. "You want ovens running again? You want contracts back online? Then you'll sign these." My father picked up the packet, heavy in his hands. The title page read, "Revised Governance Agreement." His eyes narrowed. "What is this?" "Structure," I replied. "Voting rights proportional to contributions. No more blanket authority, no more backroom texts removing people like pawns. You want decisions made? They'll be made on record." Sofía laughed once, brittle, too loud. "You think you can rewrite decades of tradition with a few pages of paper?" I held her gaze, calm. "Tradition didn't keep the lights on last year. I did. And if you think these are just pages, remember, every vendor, every lender already knows who holds the keys. Without signatures here, nothing moves. The ovens stay cold." Marco snatched his copy, flipping pages noisily. "This gives you veto power?" "Correction," I said evenly. "It gives everyone proportional power. I simply happen to hold the largest share because I put in the most. If you want more, contribute more." My mother's voice wavered, barely above a whisper. "Ava, mija, is this really necessary?" I softened only for her, just enough. "Yes, mama, because necessary is what kept your paycheck steady when the account was bone dry. Necessary is what saved your name from being printed in bankruptcy court." The room sagged with the weight of inevitability. My father's pen tapped against the cover page. Once, twice, then still. He looked at Sofía, who avoided his eyes. Marco fumed silently. At last, my father exhaled, shoulders sinking. "Fine." The words scraped out like gravel. He uncapped his pen. The sound of nib to paper filled the silence dragging across the page. Marco muttered curses under his breath, but signed next. My mother's hand shook, but she signed too. Only Sofía hesitated, her bracelets jangling as she set the packet down. "You may think you've won today," she hissed, "but this family doesn't forget." I slid a pen toward her with 2 fingers, slow and precise. "Good," I said softly. "Then you won't forget who kept the ovens warm while you played queen." For a moment, I thought she might fling the pen at me, but then, with a sharp inhale, she scrawled her name, pressing so hard the ink bled through. When the last signature hit the page, I gathered the packets, stacking them neatly. The sound echoed like a gavel. "Effective immediately," I said. "Calder and Hearth will operate under this agreement. Welcome to the future." No one applauded. The only applause came from the city outside. A car horn, a child laughing somewhere down the street. Inside, the coffee had long gone cold, bitter and untouched. I closed my laptop bag, rising slowly. They watched me, silent, uneasy, defeated. And though the battle was finished, I let a small truth hover in the room, unsaid but undeniable. They thought this was my victory. They didn't realize this was just my opening move. The packets were signed, stacked, sealed. The projector was dark, the air heavy with words no one dared speak. I slid the stack into my bag, snapped the clasp shut. For a moment, no one moved. Even Sofía's bracelets were silent. Then I stood. The chair legs scraped the floor, the sound sharp in the quiet. I felt all their eyes on me, anger, shame, fear, but none of them could reach me now. The blinds caught the morning sun, throwing stripes of gold across the table. Papers still lay scattered there, marked with fresh signatures, ink glistening like scars. Marco drummed his fingers once, then stopped when I looked his way. I walked to the door, my heels steady against the old wood. The smell of yeast and flour drifted in through the window. Bakeries on the block already at work, ovens humming. Life outside hadn't paused for our war. I paused at the doorway, one hand on the frame. My voice was calm, but it cut sharper than any shout. Remember, nothing bakes here without me? That's not threat, that's fact. No one answered. Not a sound. I stepped into the hall. Behind me, the door clicked shut, soft as a gavel. Outside, the city stirred awake. Delivery trucks grumbling, bicycles whirring, a child laughing as her father hurried her across the street. I drew in the crisp morning air, cool against the bitterness still clinging to my tongue. The weight on my chest lifted, replaced by something steadier. Not relief, not revenge, control. And as I walked down the steps, leaving the silence of that house behind, one thought stayed with me, pulsing like a drumbeat. The ovens will stay warm, but the family, that warmth, they may never feel again. And that's how it ended. Signatures on paper, silence at the table, and a door that closed behind me. The ovens stayed warm, but the warmth of family may be gone forever. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you draw the line, protect your work, and demand respect, even if it means turning your back on blood? Or would you forgive, keep the family dinners alive, and risk being stepped on again? Tell me in the comments, was I too cold for cutting them off? Or finally strong enough for standing my ground?